Hello and welcome to the Engineer Exchange, a podcast where we exchange experiences, insights and knowledge with experts in the industry.
Today we're having a discussion all about school streets.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Hayley, and we're your podcast hosts.
And today we are joined by two experts from Waterman Aspen and a special guest as well. I'll let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Nick, if that's okay.
I'm Nick Flood. I'm the Associate Director for the South East team. I've been in the industry for over 20 years with a traffic engineering background and have had some involvement in school streets and active travel schemes.
I'm Liz Brooker. I work for the London Borough of Lewisham. I'm also chair of Road Safety GB London. My background is road safety education and sustainable transport, and I've been around for years and years and years.
Mark Woodhead, Regional Director in the Northwest region of Waterman Aspen. I've over 35 years of experience working predominantly in the public sector, various local authorities in Greater Manchester area, working in highway design, traffic engineering, lots of different elements of traffic engineering, and recently been involved in a small way supporting one of our clients with some school streets that they've recently introduced.
Awesome. So let's start at a very high level. For anyone listening who doesn't know already, could you give us an overview of what a school street is? We'll start with you, Liz.
Well, I would say, first of all, it's not a closure in many cases. We made a big mistake when we first introduced school streets, which is basically it's where you're reducing traffic near to the school gate, creating a safer, calmer, cleaner environment just at the area where children are travelling to and from school, near to the school gate. We made a big mistake calling closure because some that are camera enforced, they're not closed and traffic still goes through. So we had a few complaints. That's tip number one. Don't say closure.
Well, we fell foul of that. So closure, we put them in the Northwest. We looked at closures, but it is, like you say there, Liz, it's understanding that it's not a closure in the terms that a traffic engineer would know it or a member of the public. It's a full road closure. Mm-hmm. These are limited interventions, really, to encourage people to just think about the journey. Yes, it makes the air clean around the school. You can see all that, but it's just making people think a bit about the journey. Do you really need to take the car? Do you need to park right outside the school gates? Is it better to walk? Is it better to cycle? It's changing that dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Really. I guess the other thing to add there as well is it's just for an hour in the morning or an hour in the afternoon, so it's very time limited. So for pupils going to maybe the breakfast club or doing after school activities, there might not be a restriction at that time. So it's a restriction for a period of time in the morning and in the afternoon, term time only, and term time only and a short period.
Yeah.
What prompts it usually? Like, what's something that sort of says, like, we need a school street?
It's mainly the complaints that you get. I mean, everybody experiences it, don't they? Congestion around the school, parents' concern about safety, the number of cars, residents. Residents outside a school have to put up with the commute from people, parking outside drives, parking unsocially, parking early, leaving their engines running. There's a whole host of reasons why we do this, but the difference with school street than probably traditional traffic engineering that I've been involved in is where we put the yellow lines down and, highways will sort it, put yellow lines down, then you get the complaints, nobody's enforcing the yellow lines or when nobody's there. So this is done in conjunction with the school as well. So the school and the school teachers, the school head, that they're on board and also looking at the travel plans and what schools do.
So like a collaboration.
It's definitely a collaboration because you've got the school, you've got the residents, you've got the parents, and it's bringing all those together really to find something that could work.
Yeah. I think it can also come from your political, your local authority. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a local authority that is very, very keen to make a difference, improving air quality, encouraging more active travel, then from the political side, you can be encouraged to do more school streets. So within my borough, we've done 55 in 4 or 5 years, and that's because there's been real political support as well. So we haven't necessarily we've offered it to the schools. We've had no real. I think we've had one school was a little bit. They weren't too keen, but that's because their gate during COVID, their gate opened out onto a park. So they said actually you could spend the money better off on another school that would probably benefit from it more.
Wow. Okay.
So that was the only school that said no, we don't want it. So we've pushed it, promoted it, and then the schools that have had it actually, on the whole, I'd say 99% have absolutely loved it.
They're
because
promoting
they've
it for you, then,
Yeah.
aren't they? Because
Yeah.
they've had a success, and
Yeah.
then it grows from there.
So now all the other schools that haven't got them, it's sort of like, well, when are we getting ours? It's
Nice.
funding and time, but it will happen.
Well, I've got a statistic here. So it's not just a UK thing. It's actually found in a lot of other European countries and other countries around the world. So surveys in Belgium, Canada, France, and the United Kingdom repeatedly show that school streets are popular amongst parents, children, with a strong majority for both supporting them. So I can imagine that, like, initially it might have some you might have some pushback from maybe residents or parents, but in general, it is something that is very well received by everyone.
It is generally well received. It's understanding that there are issues. People have real issues getting to school, and it's not that carte blanche. This is a school street. You cannot drive to school, or you should not drive, like you're doing something wrong. That's not the case. It's understanding everybody's point of view. But then you work with the school. You mentioned the breakfast club there. If the school hasn't got a breakfast club, if they give a breakfast club, would that help? And it's engaging in all the different tools that we have to try and get something that can. I'd class it as a compromise between, all road users, but we get something that is safer and it's better.
I think you sometimes also get real concerns from residents, because now so many people have deliveries, their Uber Eats and their Deliveroos and their
Amazon
their supermarket Amazon deliveries and all the other ones there are. But with that people are really, really concerned. And they then, I think, once we've introduced it, they've seen that actually all these companies, all these delivery people get over it. They get round it. They can still do the deliveries. It's just not between. And as we keep saying, it's the 45 minutes, an hour in the morning. There's probably very little actually goes on in that time. And a lot of delivery people probably avoid that school run time near schools as much as they can anyway. And as I say, we've had concerns from residents. And then once it's in, it doesn't. The worry of what it's going to be is far less than the actual benefits they get from it. Mm-hmm. They haven't got parents parking on their driveways or blocking them in. Yeah. And obviously, the other thing, I haven't mentioned is that we offer exemptions to residents, so they'll get a free exemption. So if it is camera enforced, then they can still get in and out and take their children, or they can go to hospital appointments, whatever it is. They can still get out. So it's I think that's the important thing. It's a benefit to the residents as well.
Yeah.
Once they realise they're not restricted, they kind of go, oh, okay, as long as I can still do my movement, it's not going to be too much.
It'll be a bit easier for them, probably, actually.
And that goes back to what you said at the beginning, Liz, doesn't it? It's not a closure. So lesson one, don't call it a closure.
Yeah.
If you approach anyone with, we're going to close your road,
you've got the back road straight away.
We're only closing it for an hour. Well, just a minute. Yeah. How does that work then? I've got a delivery, I've got to get out. You've got carers come round, home help come round and help me in the morning. So closure, it's not the word to start with.
So how is a school street implemented? What are some of the processes involved in launching one in your area? And maybe this varies from place to place across the UK as well. But what are some of the processes involved to get one started? Start with Liz, if that's okay.
I think the first thing is to look at the road layout. Before you can do anything really, before you've got to check that it's feasible. That's when you then look at what you can do at that location. So we've done a couple of the. In order to reduce costs, there's an AMPR camera at one end, and we've done maybe a no entry plug at the other, so that we haven't got two cameras, and it also helps then maybe to reduce a rat run that residents have complained about in the past anyway. So it's a double edge then. I think you mentioned earlier about school travel plans. Trying to get the school on board so that you're not fighting the school to do it, giving them all the benefits as to why a school street would work for them. One of the, I don't know whether I should say this out loud, but one of the really good things is when there is a camera, it means staff get in before the time's enforced. So it sort of gets everybody to work on time. But that's one of those real little sort of, it's a way of sort of like encouraging a school to take part if they're a little bit reticent about it. Sort of like, well, everybody's going to be in, so ready to work.
I was going to add to that, it's like you say, it's that collaboration. You get lots of requests for school streets when you say to people, we're going to reduce traffic outside a school and it's going to be a lot calmer and safer. Well, I can't think of a school that's not going to want that. So it's, first of all, looking at the street. So if it's on a bus route, you're not going to close the road for an hour, no matter what. If it's on a bus route.
We have actually done those.
Have you done that? We're not there yet.
Yeah,
in the
so
north.
we have, because it's camera enforced, then buses have got the exemption. So on the sign, it will just say buses are exempt. So, yeah.
I think that maybe that's one that we'll get to in the future. I think that, we get enough debate about bus gates and there not being a gate there, but there's a sign that says it's a bus gate, you can't go past, and people get fines. But I think it's working with the school as well, looking at the travel plan. So and it stops it becoming you can tell I'm a highway traffic engineer, a highway problem that the highways need to sort out. This isn't. This is the community issue. This is parents. This is residents. This is the school. This is everybody. Deliveries. This is everybody. Even some of the deliveries. It's not common sense. Do I need to make a delivery at 8:30? Do I need to request a delivery at 8:30 in the morning? I would say not. There are ways that we can help each other. So it's getting that collaboration going. Interesting there, we did look at the streets on the ones we've done, and we looked at the network, and sometimes removing the conflict, we introduce one-way streets to make it easier to introduce a school street. But also, what that did was remove some of the natural conflicts. If you ever tried driving up a road when it's busy and it's not wide enough for two cars, you're looking at gaps, you're letting the other car, and it's interesting, I'm talking about the car problems all the time. Imagine you're a resident, somebody walking along the pavement, and you've got all this, and you want to cross the road. Everything's difficult.
I was very sorry for wheelchair users as well, or people with prams, when there's cars parked on either side, and then there's cars weaving in and out because there's not enough space. It's like they take up more space because there's cars parked on either side. They take up space on the like pedestrian on the path, and then you think, oh, well, where do the pedestrians go? And it's always built around road users in cars. So.
The other thing it's done, is it's taken away the problem of people parking on the zigzag lines outside schools. That was something
just dangerous,
we had.
Isn't it? Yeah,
completely. We used to have so many complaints. We've tried, going out and doing a road safety initiative where we would go out and ask them to move on. And I've been called more names than I'd like to say, because people just don't like being told to move on by just a road safety officer or just a council employee. But now, because the road is so open and so much clearer, if you are the parent that parks on the zigzag lines, then it's really, really obvious. So it's sort of, people have stopped doing that. So on the roads where we got school streets, we've had no complaints about zigzag line parking. So that problem that we've had for,
isn't it?
30 years odd, we haven't got.
No, I'm picking up on the word you just used there as well. It's that. I'm just there for a moment. I'm just dropping my children off. I'm not here long.
They've always got an excuse as to why it's okay.
There's an excuse, but if you multiply that excuse by 50 people, I'm just there for 2 minutes, then that's part of the problem in a way, that everyone's just doing something that is in their eyes not harmful or can be accommodated. But when you've got a mass of people just doing that, that becomes a problem.
Yeah. I think just thinking as well of what you were saying at the beginning about how what else do we do? So it's, we said about the feasibility. I think the other thing is if you're going to consult, I always think it's a little bit like offering a toddler how many breakfasts, what do you want, this, or this? Whereas actually you just give them toast or just give them cereal. So what we've done is very much we've put the school street in, and then we've done it under a experimental traffic order, so that it's in place. We're not asking people what they think about it before they know the benefits of it.
Right.
So put it in, and then after the 12 months and then up to the 18 months, we've made them permanent because the complaints haven't flowed in. Whereas I do wonder, if we'd consulted beforehand, would we have had a lot of concerns and complaints before they've even experienced it? So that's another one. My next sort of like tip would be, don't say closure, and do it under an experimental traffic order, so that it's real. Then they can speak about with knowledge.
It's almost like a live consultation whilst
Yeah.
it's in, and it's learning those issues, because there is a fear of change.
Yeah.
So that this is not going to work, and in any scheme where we're not very good at delivering schemes, I don't think sometimes, you know, that the consultation and the debate often overtakes the need to get it in, and it's like, I say that in a bias, the need to get it in, you know, that's me being biased, but I mean, if you put something in, and it is, but if you put something in and see how it works, and then you can change it. And the ones that we did I've been a small part involved in the Northwest, where I was surprised, even myself, residents and our parents, when it was implemented, coming back going, this is just so much better. And they use the word, it feels calmer. It feels, it just feels nicer to do that. And you're thinking, well, that is changing our mindset of where we're at, I think.
Is there any like formal way of monitoring the success or measuring the success, or is it just as simple as what we've talked about there, you know, the way that the attitudes, the feedback that you've had, the verbal feedback, or is there any like formal methods of measuring the success?
A good way is hands up survey at the school, you know, who walks to school, who drives to school, just a hands up and see what percentage of people are doing that. You can do that before and after, but every year there's a new intake of pupils and a new intake of parents as well. And my hope is that those school streets that have been implemented for some time, well, yeah, sometimes I do feel a little bit sorry for the parents where we're changing it now, because they've got a routine. You know, I'm a parent as well. You have a routine. That routine's being changed somewhat, but the next generation or the next year of parents, the school street's in. So you know what you're getting involved in, and you know, as human beings, we're very, very adaptable when we know, you know, and we can plan. And I think that's another thing I've learned. If you put it in and persevere with it, then in time it becomes a norm.
It's part of that school, then, isn't it? If you're going to go to that school, it's a school street, and it's been in, and so we won't be able to park there, and it's been that way for a little while. So, like you say, people adapt, and it's not a problem anymore.
The other thing that we've looked at during when we put in our first ones, it was during COVID, and so doing monitoring before and after was very difficult because life was just so different then. What we're doing with the ones we're doing now is doing the traffic counts and monitoring beforehand, so that we can do the before, and then we can do it again exactly a year later. And sometimes you will get if there are complaints, it's about the people that live on the outside of the school street, that everybody's parking there or hanging around in those areas, and that's got busier. So what we need to do is be able to sort of argue that case that actually traffic has reduced by X amount, and make sure we've got the data to back up the queries or the questions we get regarding that.
You've just showed them the evidence, aren't you? It's working.
Yeah, definitely.
But there is displacement, and you can't, you know, there's always going to be some displacement. But I think, again, go back to over time, and I spoke to this colleagues before. For me, it's a generational thing. It is, and I think we've got to accept where we are, and start putting the building blocks in to just change mindset. And active cars become the norm. Jumping in a car. When I was growing up, didn't have a car. There weren't as many cars. Now there's a lot of cars. We need to reverse that trend and get people more active. It's good. Health benefits and everything about it is good.
I think the children also help encourage the parents. Children probably would rather walk to school. Well, sometimes mine doesn't, but
Scooter
or
things like
can I
that,
take my scooter? Can I take my bike? If there's a school street and you've got nice ways to get to that school, then that's the children kind of go, we don't need to take the car. I want to take my scooter or take my bike. So then the children are on board with it, which they help encourage the parents. So actually, we don't need to take the car. We can actually walk and go and see them that way.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this already, but in order for a school street to work, it involves the efforts of the community, not just the council imposing road closures. So what can be done to make this safe and seamless for the children, parents and the residents?
For me, it's conversation. It's conversation and it's listening as well. As officers, or if you're delivering a scheme, you've got to be prepared to listen as well. This isn't, going in. Yes, we use the experimental orders, but I'll go back to what was referred to earlier. It's a live consultation. So I think to make it a success, you've got to be prepared to listen and listen to the. No two streets are the same. No school streets are the same, and no two residents are the same as well. And so, arguments, I think, as highway traffic, we used to say, this works there, it must work everywhere. School streets is a bit more to it. You've got to listen more and understand what all the residents' needs are.
I think also communication as well, really good, clear communication, so that parents know why we're doing it, the reasoning, that it is for the children's benefit, and it's not that we're not stopping you driving, rather the other way around, we're making it nicer and, like you said, nicer, calmer, cleaner, a better environment for your children. So I think making sure that you find the positives and you make sure that you communicate those with the parents and the carers and with the staff at the school. And I think the other thing is just then where the more you do, other schools will then want it. So you're then creating a demand for school streets. And I think that's the other thing. So sort of create the demand and communicate clearly.
I think it's important in the listening process as well. We mentioned a lot there about residents and parents. I think just as important is the teacher aspect in terms of listening to the teacher. What you don't want is to create something that almost creates a bit of angst or a barrier between the teacher and the parent. That relationship in the learning with the parent, the teacher, and everything. That's vital, really, to what the school is there for.
Yes.
What you don't want is for a teacher to feel that they're becoming part of the enforcement or the police, because I think that erodes what is a more important relationship in the child's learning.
You've just made me think as well, it's also about the fact that it's a local authority intervention. It's not the school that's doing it. So we always make sure that if the head teacher gets any complaints from local residents, they pass them on to us. Right. They don't deal with it. It's not you do the educating and managing of the school. We're doing this. So please don't get into any battles with one or two residents that might be a little bit more assertive than the rest of them.
Well, you don't want the residents going to the school, because that's like misplaced anger at the school or questions and queries and stuff.
So the other thing that we have is a dedicated email box. So it's literally school streets at so I think that's the other thing. So have a really easy way people can access you to ask questions.
Yeah.
What about education in schools? So we talked a bit about how we want to obviously preserve the teacher's relationship with the children and parents and stuff like that. But do children, is part of the initiative, do teachers also teach children in schools about healthy habits and walking to school? Is that part of the process?
Well, as a road safety officer of many, many years, and from sort of Road Safety GB, there's education programs throughout the UK, and it does depend from borough to borough and from area to area how many dedicated staff they've got actually going in and educating children. But you have also got access in London. There's a lot of lesson plans and whatnot that teachers can use on the TfL Transport for London website. Also on the Think DFT website, there's a lot of information there. But we would try and do, as part of the communications, we would do an assembly presentation as well at our schools when we're introducing a school street, just to make sure the children, because it's going to be quieter, we don't want children thinking, the road is closed, and they run out and play. So you don't want that false sense of security. They've still got to use their, shall I be really old and say Green Cross code? But you all know what I mean.
Yeah.
No, I
say
really
that.
look both
So
ways. Yeah, for sure.
You've still got to look, listen and think.
Yeah.
So really important, children are aware of the road safety rules, even though it seems quieter.
But it's also to get them involved in the process of putting a school street in. So depending on what type of school street you're putting in, if it's like a very basic one, but also there may be times where you might put in benches, play areas. It's actually getting them to say, okay, what do you think your school is like? What would you like to see? How would you like to feel when you're coming to school? So it's actually getting them, and they can be involved in that process.
That's
Oh,
of
really
saying,
nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and then again, once you get their buy-in, the school buys in, and then it kind of gets driven by, we're doing this for the children and to help them get to school, and this is kind of what they want to see. So especially in London, there's quite a lot of school streets that are now, some of them, I think it's was it in
By the Oval at
yes,
Lambeth.
that's it, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, and they've done lots and lots of conversation. Play area, it used to be dominated by the car, and they've taken it all out, benches and bits on the ground, so you can, if you want to, physically change the whole environment.
The other thing that you can do, we were fortunate, I guess, during COVID. We had a lot of funding to introduce school streets, but for any areas that haven't got so much money, then what you could do is do a regular play streets. We were talking about this earlier on about a play street, so you can do a closure, say on the day that the school fair's on in the summer, or on a Friday once a month or something, and that is you close it just using, I mean, we've done it before with wheelie bins and ribbon and whatever, and a road closure sign at either side. They have to be staffed at all times, so that if there's an emergency or any drivers do want to come in, they come in and they walk behind the monitor, almost like the red flag, like you're not going that fast, but we can allow you in. That's a really good way of seeing how residents feel about the closure. And it's a good way of communicating as well. So we've done different times where we've done adopt a bike, we've had children chalking and all different things in that area. That's a good stepping stone for any areas that are looking, could we do a school street here? Would it go down well? It's a really good sort of communication exercise at that point as well.
Yeah, I don't think we're there on the ones I've been involved in. We're not there yet on maybe some of the play streets coming in and that, but I think that's, like you say, it's a great way of people understanding the fears. Are they because on highways, I'd think, well, if a road had a burst pipe or something and the road was shut for 2 months and it was completely shut, it's inconvenient, and we think it should have been done quicker, and I can't believe it's taken more than 2 weeks to repair that, but people get by. People manage.
It's not the end of the world.
And it's not the end of the world. But people do manage, don't they? And you get by and it's inconvenient, but then you get into a different routine. And this is, I think, what we're doing. We're changing the routine. Going back, you mentioned there and investment and budgets. It's getting the school to invest as well. In all the materials are there to educate on travel, the benefits of travel, the surveys, the travel plan from the school. Areas of different catchments as well, different topographies as well. Some schools are easier to get to than others. And the public services are, transport systems are different in other areas of the country. But I think it's getting the school to invest as well with limited funding, because if they're not investing in the education of the child and those aspects and promoting it, then, well, you've got to match the investment as well, and that's the message to schools as well.
Other areas, I was thinking like public health. If it is, we've got an obesity crisis within the country, so actually, is there funding within public health groups that you could get to help introduce a school street? Or is there any development work where a business, Section 106 money, stuff like that? So I think you can be a little bit, you've got to think outside the box.
Very holistic, isn't it? There's so many moving parts. Like, why you would not think that public health would it would invest in something like that, but actually it is in the public, it's in the
public
health
interest.
for health
Promote it,
to promote it
and to educate about it as well.
This is just one piece of a jigsaw, of a
Yeah.
big jigsaw, and getting
That's
all the
crazy.
pieces together and understanding what your starting point is as well. Because you refer to other countries there, and even up in Manchester, you look at London and how many school streets there are there. It's just you've got to understand your benchmark as well, and sometimes it's small steps before you get there. Yeah.
Do you know the other thing I think is when you go away on holiday and you go somewhere and you sort of think, oh, this is such a lovely place. Why do I like it so much? And okay, there might be a nice wine bar or something, but also it's that there's very little traffic.
Yeah.
And that's what you find, there's somewhere to sit, there's things to look at, and all those things, the healthy street
And it
indicators.
feels calmer often
all those
when you're abroad,
bits,
like you said earlier.
Safer.
As well.
But,
Like going to centre parks. When you cycle around centre parks on your bike and
It's
there's no
just more
traffic.
pleasant.
You feel
Yes,
safe.
it's more pleasant.
It's pleasant. It's quieter. You feel relaxed. Those kind of things. It just helps, doesn't it, with the lack of traffic?
I mean, I drive, I have a car, but it's those places where there aren't cars. That is where you do feel it does feel, and it's all these words we keep saying, nicer, calmer, cleaner, and safer.
Yeah, for sure. So it's clear that there isn't a one size fits all approach, and what works in one area may not work in another. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about that before. Is it possible for cities and councils outside of London to implement school streets successfully? We'll start with you, Mark.
I would say yes.
Northwest. Yeah.
Yes, most definitely. And pick up on what you said there. It's not one fits all. So I mean, London have got lots of school streets, and they're way ahead of the rest of the country. I think you've got to look at all the different pieces of the jigsaw. So public transport, for instance, how often are the services? What options have you got for public transport, and what is the catchment area? But I think if there's a will and there's coordination with the school, I think yes, we can, and we should. And we should roll these out more and more, because I think relying on traditional yellow lines, car park enforcements, it's proven not working. I think everyone gets at their end of the tether, and each year it gets repeated with a new influx of parents. So we need to make that start. But yeah, absolutely.
I think you could have other schemes that would fit in with the school street, so maybe like a kiss and drop or something, so that a little bit further up the road, maybe I mean, we've even got one school, it's in Blackheath, and it's a really lovely little area, and what the school is looking at is having a kiss and drop about I don't know, quarter of a mile from where the school is. I'm terrible with distance, so it's probably not that far. But they're going to have a couple of parents do a walking bus, or a couple of staff members doing a walking bus from where the children are dropped off, to just try and stop the amount of traffic down one little lane that is in the middle of Blackheath.
That's a good idea.
So I think that's something else that out of London, which I don't know so well, but I'm sure that's something that could be brought in there.
Yeah. What about in your area, Nick? Because obviously you're not in London. And I think people might assume it's a north versus south thing or anything, but it's not. It's like London sort of is quite different to everywhere else in the country. What about where?
I think Mark mentioned sort of public transport. I think London's got, public transport's quite regular, quite close. So there's quite bus stops quite close, and depending on where you are, tube stations. And a lot of people are encouraged to walk in London already. Outside, especially in the northwest, in the south, in East Sussex and West Sussex, villages that are in the middle of nowhere, they might be on an A road and a through road, so that might be difficult. But in the towns, again, it's catering for the people that live there, and how is there a bus? If we move the cars, can we put a bus stop in? How far is the bus stop away? Could sustainable transport, could kids get the bus, or can they cycle? Is there enough cycle routes? Is the footway wide enough? So it can be done, but I think it isn't one size fits all, which is kind of what we've said before. So you just need to understand where you're putting it in, and try and understand what might work there, might not work in London.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that you can look at is a safer school zone. So even if it's not a restriction where there's cameras, it's something that just really forces the traffic to slow down. So I'm always really sort of surprised when you're going along a road and it's like 40 mile an hour and there's a, you know, primary school and the speeds are so fast outside those roads. But maybe doing something where though at that stretch, rather than having a school street, you're just really, really slowing the traffic down. So you're still offering those schools that, for whatever reason, are on a road that can't have a school street. We're not we're being equitable, I think, for all pupils. We need to make sure that every pupil can travel safely and can be encouraged to walk and cycle, scoot.
I think in East Sussex, there's a number of locations where there's an advisory 20 mile an hour zone goes in at school time, amber flashing lights, and it says 20 miles an hour between, you know,
Let's
3:15.
make it enforceable.
Yeah. So making it enforceable and making sure the drivers can see that it's 20 mile an hour and then are slowing down as well. So it might not necessarily, like you say, a school street, but there's other things that we can do there to try and reduce that traffic.
Also, could you introduce them gradually? So start off with something like that to change the mindset a little bit, and then introduce something a bit more like a school street later on when the mindset's changed slightly. I don't know if that's something that you've done in the past, but perhaps it gradually changes people's mindsets, and that might be something that would work.
I guess it depends on the road as to whether you can actually have a restriction and there's only exempted vehicles are allowed to go through. That's probably the problem. But if you can make it feel that it's more of that you're allowing traffic to go through there rather than we allow pupils to cross the road there. You know, does that make sense what I'm trying to say? You're swapping it round. So actually that is a school zone, but at these times we allow you to drive through there if you drive carefully.
No,
I might be a little bit, you know, I might be a bit cuckoo.
Well, it's just about putting the children first, isn't it? And making sure that it's a safe environment for those children. Yeah. What about generational differences? So, like, obviously times have changed compared to 30, 40 years ago. So what impact does that have on school streets now?
I think it's school streets, it's actually travel generally. For me, I think we are at a time now where we have to make changes and leave a legacy of changes that support different modes of travel. So I think that's important. I think, you know, I can, in the Northwest, there's a B network being promoted. There's lots more cycling infrastructure in. But then I do hear criticism of, you know, you build it and nobody uses it, or I've not seen many people on it. Well, think about the school streets, and we're starting off at a younger age there, trying to get people more active or thinking and less reliant on the car. It's almost like chicken and egg. You know, if you haven't got the infrastructure, you're not going to encourage people to do it. And until you build the infrastructure, you know, roads couldn't drive, cars couldn't drive everywhere at one point. But now there are roads everywhere. There are so many options to get in and out of streets or estates that, you know, it's an inconvenience to go up to the next junction and turn around. But the reality is, you sat in a car in a seat in a nice environment, not getting wet,
safe as well,
and you've spent a minute walking around. But then you expect people, you know, pedestrians, cyclists, to, I don't know, you know, walk completely out of the way and do all sorts of things. And we've got the balance completely wrong. But that's a generational thing. I think we've got a generation.
We come from a generation where the car is the king. You know, we got to 17 and we were straight in the car. I think nowadays there is that generational change where maybe more so in London outer that, you know, kids are now saying, well, I don't really need a car. I can get an Uber or I can get a bus and I can book something that will come to my door. So their dependence on the car is not maybe so much as what we had. So generations will change, you know, whether my kids will drive, I don't know. But, you know, it's that whole, actually, do we really need to take the car there? Can we just walk? And, you know, like you say, if you build it, they will come. You know, if you put something nice in over a time, that should start getting used because it's there. People will reduce their car usage. Hopefully that, you know, that's the plan, active travel, more sustainable transport, improved bus services, train services. That shift might take another 10, 15, 20 years, but that's that shift that we're hoping. That
exactly, it's not going to change overnight because you've introduced a new crossing or you've painted it's not going to change because that's happened. You're not going to see a flood of cyclists suddenly appear. And I know cyclists get frustrated because
Yeah.
the infrastructure is not going in quickly enough. So we've got to find that balance of knowing that where your starting point is. We're not the same as other European countries in terms of their network, but we're different. We're different in terms of the conurbations that we have, the makeup, the different functions of the road that we have. So we've just got to change, accept that it needs to change, and we're at the start of that change, really.
I think
And we need to promote
cycling is one where we might cycle on the road without any cycle lanes. We might not have kids. As you get older, you might have children. You think, oh, I want my kid to cycle, but I don't want to cycle on that road because it's too dangerous. But if there's a cycle lane that's been put in somewhere that's safer, just as direct, when I get to have children and they want to cycle, then, okay, well, it's there and I'll start using it.
Yeah.
So, you might put it in and people might say, well, no one uses it. But 10 years down the line,
It's got to be there to use
it'll be there.
it.
And, I'll use it.
That was the sole reason I stopped cycling. At my old job, I used to cycle to and from work every day because my route, it was only like 2.5 miles, so it was really short. It was all cycle lanes, which was great. I moved house. I still wanted to continue cycling to work because it was still only about 3 miles from my work. I was like, I didn't have a car either. I didn't drive. And I was like, I want to still cycle. I was not cycling on those roads. It was like, cars parked on either side. It was like 40-mile-an-hour dual carriageway. And I was just like, there's no way for me to safely, I didn't feel comfortable cycling. So I'd stopped and I really didn't want to, but the infrastructure and the safety was, it was not there.
Well, imagine future generation, 15, 20, 25 years. We've got parents that drive to school. You can have with parents that want to cycle to school with their children, to cycle with them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be refreshing?
Yeah.
But, and that's me, hypocrite here. I obviously don't cycle too much. But you've got to put those facilities in to enable that to change. And then you've got to change the attitudes will come. Maybe too late for myself. But you've got to start young and think of it as a legacy. What are you leaving for people?
We've also got to look at the casualty numbers because our casualties are lower than they have been in, so we can say all this, 20 years ago, everybody was walking, blah, blah, blah. Our casualties were higher. And there was less cars on the road, so were cars going faster? I don't know. There's more 20-mile-an-hour speed limits now, certainly in sort of city centres and in towns, and our casualties are going down. Obviously, every one fatality or serious injury is one too many, and the whole aim for Vision Zero is, we've got to try and reach that. But I think we've just got to be really careful when we're talking about safety. I mean, we've gone off a tangent a little bit from school streets, but I think if we're, like your fear of cycling, actually, it's not so dangerous. And I do think, as a non-engineer, I think when you see people cycling on pavements, maybe you should cycle along that road and see why they're cycling on the pavement.
Yes.
And I know they shouldn't be, and, don't come for me because it's against the law, blah, blah, blah. But there's a reason somebody's cycling on a pavement.
Well, this is why I stopped cycling because I was like, I can't cycle on the pavement. And it was far too dangerous for me to cycle to work. And I loved cycling to work every day. I loved it. It made me feel good going into work. It made me feel really healthier, like a lot healthier. And then I just couldn't. And it was it was such a short distance. It was so silly. Like,
I mean, on some of the school streets that the recent one that I've seen implemented, I've been there and you go there and monitor it, and then you see a parent walking and the child's on a little bike, with the little stabilisers, and they're encouraging them and they're with them, all the time. And you just think, well, it's changing that mindset.
I love it when you see the parents scooting back. They scoot the kids and they scoot back.
That's why you get a big scooter. That's what I do. Buy a bigger scooter.
I get funny looks, but I still do it. I
scooter.
think where I live, there's a park just before. There's a big green area in a little park. And when my oldest daughter was going to school, there was no way through the park. You had to go around the edges and it was muddy. And then they had some extra travel money and they put in a 3-metre wide footway directly through the green area. And since that's gone in, we can now scoot, we can now cycle. My younger daughter, Dad, can I scoot today? Yeah, okay, of course you can. And we have to go across the road, but it gives her that opportunity just to it's 3 meters wide, and she can scoot and she sees her friends. So that kind of
social.
It is active travel, but that kind of would be her school doesn't have a school street. But again, you could argue, well, active travel and school streets do go hand in hand, because you're trying to encourage more use. So we've got the active travel bit, and maybe her school needs a school street. I don't know. Probably could do with it, to be honest with you. How, again, it would be one of those situations where I'm not entirely sure how it would work due to how what's there and people live there and the topography of the road. But again, sort of active travel and school streets kind of do go hand in hand if you want them to. You can do a whole sort of holistic approach to the area.
What about the fact that everything is more urgent nowadays compared to what it was maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago? Everything's more urgent. People are set in their ways. People tend to, we've heard people tend to use cars for shorter journeys now compared to what they used to. How do we change that behaviour?
I'll flip that round to questions to yourself. What happens if you don't change? What happens if you don't try and change it? You accept
we
it.
stay the same. We
accept it.
Yeah.
We stay the same. Yeah. It's the same. I don't know.
It's the
We
same.
know
It's the
that
same
has
a good place to
consequences.
be. I would argue probably not.
You covered it a little bit earlier, I think, where you were saying about people don't like change, but if you're starting a child at a school that there's a school street already, that is the new normal. And in 8 years' time, every child at a primary school would have gone through that. There's no change. That is reality then.
It's just the norm.
So it is we're just making a new norm
Yeah.
and different areas at different times, but it will, I think the other thing then, when you have a new norm, you're then also creating demand. So it might be your county will have more school streets, but the county next door think, well, we better get some
We need to
because
get some, yeah.
because those schools are maybe doing better with all the other aspects of education and learning as well.
I'd flip it around to what I said about the negative of people say, I'm just parking here, I'm just here for a minute,
Yeah.
I'm just nipping in the shop, I'm just... You could flip that round, you know. There's so many just, but then flip it round in a positive. It's just a school street. It's just 5 metres of a cycle thing. It's just...
Yeah.
But all them just start to add up. And so eventually, whereas all the justs at the moment are just doing it, becomes arguably perceived as a problem, then just will be seen as a positive. Maybe I live in a bubble of naivety. But you never know.
No, I
You never
think
know.
that's pretty positive
Yeah.
outlook, to be honest. Just like building on that, that last question, what are some of the positive results that schools, children, parents and communities can see from implementing a school street? I know we've talked quite a lot about this, but the positive results, like what are some that you have seen in your area?
The positive for me was on the first one that I witnessed, and it was in Oldham, and it was relatively very simple. It was closing a cul-de-sac, and this party. What's that? It was seeing people hanging around. Not hanging around is probably the wrong word, but after school, not rushing off, standing, talking.
Sociable.
Kids being social.
That's
and,
cool.
and you know, the parent, that's the same school where a parent came past and said, oh, it's just so much calmer, nicer. And for me, that just making the environment around it more pleasant. And I would hope the residents see the benefit. There is still the issue of displacement, don't get me wrong, so I'm not here to say everything's perfect. But I would hope they find it more pleasant as well. So, things are more pleasant, you're a little less naughty, you're more tolerant with each other. You know what I mean?
Reduce the stress
That's
levels.
not a bad thing, is it?
No.
Well, that sounds a lot nicer than maybe pulling up on the side, putting your hazard lights on a double yellow, dropping your kid off at school and then driving away straight away.
Yeah.
Again, some people who are embedded in that routine at the moment, might be difficult for them. That sounds a lot nicer than what a lot the people are doing now.
Throw the kid out the door and quickly run.
Squeezing your child between parked cars, trying to cross the
Yes.
road and looking up and down, and then if it's cold, the engines are running as well, so you walk past an exhaust. I mean, I walk past an exhaust, I'm taller than a car, but when my daughter walked past it,
Yes.
when she wasn't, she was
Crossing the road in
she was the
between
same height as
parked
it.
cars
Yeah,
as
in
well.
a
Not,
phase.
not the same height as an
Not
exhaust
nice.
in the pram, but it's very close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also play, seeing children, like the same as you said there. I mean, I went past a school street in Lewisham the other day, and it's one that's enforced by camera. So it does mean vehicles can go in there, residents can go in there, But they weren't, and there was children in the road and they were just playing, and parents were there as well. And you think, how good, children don't play enough. We go to arranged clubs, we do so much that is formal, but that just free play is so important, and that is lovely to see.
I'd say that's a good example, isn't it, of where you change the dynamic as well. Because I would imagine when the car goes down that particular street, it's not a car's coming, everyone dash out of the way. It's I'm going down the street. Oh, there's lots of pedestrians here. No, should I be here? But it's like I'm gonna drive with care and attention. And not and not assume that the person that's crossing the road is delaying me. It's like no, we're sharing the space. And it ties in with the highway code where it talks about crossing the road. Let pedestrians cross at the junction. That triangle, the triangle of the pyramid, of hierarchy. So that's a good example.
Do you think it sets a good example for other streets in like more active travel, like not just school streets? So if you have more school streets within an area, do you think that it sets a good example for maybe more active travel schemes across like the same area? What do you think, Nick?
Can do, yeah. I think if they can see that the school street has helped reduce traffic flow through, improve the area, then I don't say why not. And it kind of leads on to what the livable neighbourhoods were, is that sometimes, especially in London and schemes that we've done for Lewisham in the past, is that they sometimes led with a school street first and then potentially have kind of then gone on to a livable neighbourhood. So sometimes the school street is more acceptable. It goes in, like I said, in experimental order. People actually say, well, actually, it's not too bad. And then you can then maybe widen the net. Say, okay, well, let's look at a livable neighbourhood and how do we manage that and reduce the traffic through the neighbourhood. So it's not just one street. You're looking at the whole area. So, I think it can lead on to more active travel schemes in the
healthy
area.
neighbourhoods,
That's
pocket
it,
parks.
Pocket parks, play on the way stuff, all that kind of stuff. So, I think it does. I think in Lewisham, when Roger was there, he said we sometimes started off with a school street and then people liked it and then went on to the livable neighbourhood.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. It's been such an amazing discussion, hearing all about your experiences, your projects, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone at home for joining us for the Engineer Exchange. Keep an eye out on our YouTube, Spotify and TikTok channels for more content coming soon.